Hey there, welcome to another deep dive.
Oh, yeah.
Today we're going way back to the ancient world
All right.
to uncover the story of a kingdom caught in a geopolitical tug of war.
Okay.
The Elamites.
Interesting.
We'll be exploring their struggle for survival
Right.
during the Neo-Elamite period and how they managed to leave a lasting mark on history even as their kingdom crumbled around them.
A fascinating case study, really.
Yeah.
Imagine being squeezed between two rising superpowers, each hungry for land and resources.
Right.
That was Elam's reality, from about 1100 to 539 BCE,
Wow.
with Assyria on one side
Okay.
and Babylon on the other. A real pressure cooker situation.
Not the ideal place to be, for sure.
Right.
But before we dive into that drama, I have to ask, who are the Elamites?
Yeah.
And why should we care about them?
Well, the Elamites had a rich and distinct culture, with their own language and a history stretching back centuries.
I see.
Their kingdom, Elam, occupied a strategic sweet spot in what's now southwest Iran. Mountains, fertile plains, and crucial trade routes all rolled into one.
Oh, wow.
This made them both a target for ambitious empires and a valuable ally to have.
So prime real estate in the ancient world.
Exactly.
But by the Neo-Elamite period, things were getting complicated, weren't they?
Exactly. Elam wasn't the unified force it once was.
Okay.
It had fractured into smaller, often competing political entities.
Right.
Think of it like a kingdom trying to hold itself together while being pulled in different directions. And then you've got Assyria and Babylon looming large on the horizon,
Right.
each vying for regional dominance.
Let's talk about Assyria first. I've read about their military prowess. Those guys didn't mess around.
Oh, they were known for their brutal efficiency.
Really?
We're talking a well-oiled war machine with advanced military tactics,
Oh, wow.
and a king, Tiglath-Pileser III,
Okay.
who started an empire-wide push for expansion that would come to define this era. His successors inherited not only his ambitions,
Right.
but a blueprint for conquest.
I see.
Later, under Ashurbanipal,
Okay.
the Assyrians really flexed their muscles and put Elam squarely in their sights.
Okay, so this Tiglath-Pileser guy sounds like a real game changer.
Yeah, he really set the stage.
But what about the Elamites?
Right.
How did they respond to this rising Assyrian threat?
They were masters of realpolitik,
Uh-huh.
playing a dangerous game of alliances and intrigue.
Oh, wow.
They tried to survive by exploiting the rivalry between Assyria and Babylon,
Okay.
forging alliances and even backing rebellions to keep the bigger powers off balance.
High-stakes diplomacy in action?
It was.
Any specific examples of how this strategy played out?
Definitely. The Battle of Dor in 720 BCE is a great example.
Okay.
Elam threw their support behind the Babylonians,
Right.
who were rebelling against Assyrian rule. It was a bloody clash.
Oh, wow.
And while neither side achieved a decisive victory,
Okay.
it showed that the Elamites were willing to fight tooth and nail even against a superior foe. This was really the start of Elam being dragged into the center of these Mesopotamian power struggles.
A sign of things to come, I imagine.
Unfortunately, yeah.
You mentioned Ashurbanipal earlier, the Assyrian king who really ramped up the pressure on Elam.
Right.
What made him different from his predecessors?
Well, every Assyrian king had his own brand of ambition, but Ashurbanipal was different.
Really?
It wasn't enough for him to just conquer.
Okay.
He wanted to humiliate his enemies,
Right.
to break their spirit.
Oh, wow.
And he had a flair for the dramatic. His inscriptions aren't just dry accounts of military campaigns.
Okay.
They're full of vivid descriptions of his victories,
I see.
boasting about sacking cities, race-nousing temples,
Wow.
even scattering in the statues of Elamite gods.
That's a bit more than just wanting to win.
Yeah, it was about sending a message.
What do you make of that kind of ruthlessness? Do you think it was just for show, or was there a deeper strategy at play?
It's certainly a power move, designed to intimidate rivals and project an image of overwhelming strength.
Right.
But I also think it reveals a deep-seated anxiety
Okay.
that often comes with empire building.
Uh-huh.
Erasing a rival's gods, their cultural symbols,
Yeah.
is a way of trying to erase their memory, their identity.
Right.
It's as if Ashurbanipal wanted to ensure that Elam wouldn't be able to rise again,
Oh, wow.
even in the hearts and minds of its people.
It's almost like saying, we didn't just conquer you, we obliterated you.
Exactly.
It makes you think about how fragile even powerful empires can be.
Absolutely.
They're always trying to shore up their legitimacy to
Right.
stamp out any potential threats.
Precisely. And this brings us to a pivotal moment in Elamite history.
Okay.
The destruction of their capital Susa.
Right.
It wasn't just a military defeat.
Mhm.
It was a cultural annihilation aimed at erasing Elam's very identity.
This is where things take a darker turn, right?
Ah.
Susa was more than just a city. It was
Wait.
the heart of Elamite culture.
Absolutely. It was a magnificent city,
Wow.
filled with palaces, temples, a ziggurat dedicated to their main god in Shushanak.
Interesting.
It represented centuries of Elamite history and achievement.
And then in 647 BCE, Ashurbanipal's forces arrived.
And what they did to Susa was brutal and systematic.
Oh, no.
They didn't just occupy it, they
Mhm.
destroyed it. Ashurbanipal even bragged about scattering their gods to the wind.
Oh, wow.
Imagine your most sacred sites being desecrated, your history literally being torn down.
That's awful.
It was a devastating blow, culturally and spiritually, from which Elam never fully recovered.
So after the fall of Susa, were the Elamites finished?
You'd think so, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
But that's what makes the Elamites so interesting. They were down, but not out.
Really?
Remember those alliances they'd been forging?
Yeah.
Well, those became even more important as Assyria's grip on the region tightened.
Okay.
They found common cause with the Babylonians,
Right.
who were also chafing under Assyrian rule.
So even in their weakened state, they were still players in the game.
Yes, they were.
It's like they refused to be written out of the story.
Exactly. And here's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
Even though they were on the decline, the Elamites actually played a role in bringing down the mighty Assyrian Empire that had just crushed them.
Hold on. They helped bring down the giant that had just sacked their capital.
They did.
How did they manage that?
Well, their alliance with Babylon was key.
Okay.
By joining forces, they helped chip away at Assyrian power,
Uh-huh.
contributing to a series of rebellions that ultimately led to Assyria's collapse in 609 BCE.
Wow.
It's a bit ironic, isn't it?
It's more than ironic. It's a testament to their resilience, their refusal to give up.
I agree.
Even facing overwhelming odds, they managed to influence the course of history.
They did.
But I have to wonder, did this victory, this role in Assyria's downfall, give Elam a new lease on life?
Unfortunately, no.
Oh.
While their alliances bought them some time,
Right.
it was a delaying tactic, not a solution.
Okay.
You see, as Assyria fell, new threats emerged. Babylon, now free from Assyrian domination, had its own ambitions.
Right.
And on the horizon, a new power was rising, the Persians.
So it sounds like Elam traded one set of problems for another,
They did.
caught between a resurgent Babylon and these new Persian upstarts.
Exactly. And sadly for Elam, they were about to be caught in the middle of it all. Their time, it seemed, was running out. It really does feel like the final act of a historical drama.
Yeah.
Everyone vying for the throne as the old order crumbles.
Oh,
Unfortunately, the Elamites found themselves on the losing side of this power struggle.
Hmm.
Their independence already weakened by internal divisions and relentless pressure from their neighbors.
yeah.
Couldn't withstand the combined might of Babylon and the rising Persian Empire.
So it wasn't a sudden collapse, but more of a slow fade?
Yes, a tilate as we called it earlier.
Right.
There wasn't one dramatic event that marked the end of Elam.
Okay.
Instead, it was a gradual decline, a loss of territory, influence, autonomy, until they were finally absorbed into the Persian Empire.
It's almost sadder that way, isn't it?
It is.
A slow erosion rather than a sudden dramatic end.
Right.
But you said earlier that their story doesn't end there.
It doesn't.
Even though Elam was conquered, they still left a lasting mark.
They did.
What did you mean by that?
That's what I find so fascinating about studying ancient history.
Mm-hmm.
Even when kingdoms fall, their influence can linger in surprising ways.
Uh-huh.
And that's certainly true of Elam. Think of them as a cultural bridge between Mesopotamia and Persia.
Okay.
They occupied such a strategic location that over centuries they'd absorbed and adapted elements of Mesopotamian culture.
Right.
Things like administrative practices, artistic styles,
Hmm.
even religious ideas.
So they were like a cultural melting pot, blending these different traditions.
Yes, and when the Persians arrived, they encountered this rich blend of Elamite and Mesopotamian culture,
I see.
and they were clearly influenced by it. You could say that Elam played a role, even if indirectly,
Okay.
in shaping the Persian Empire, which went on to become one of the largest and most influential empires the world had ever seen.
Wow. So even in decline, they were helping to shape the future.
In a way, they were.
What kind of specific influence are we talking about?
There's evidence of Elamite influence in early Persian architecture, particularly in their palaces.
Oh, wow.
And scholars believe that the Persians adopted some aspects of the Elamite system of government administration,
Interesting.
perhaps finding it a useful model for managing their own vast empire.
It makes you think what seems like a defeat at the time can actually plant the seeds for future developments.
That's a good point.
It's almost as if their culture had this ripple effect, extending far beyond their own borders.
Exactly. And speaking of echoes from the past, we can't forget about the Elamite language and writing system.
Right.
Although their language didn't survive,
Mm-hmm.
the inscriptions and texts they left behind provide valuable insights into their unique culture and beliefs.
It's like piecing together a puzzle, isn't it?
It
Using
very-
these fragments of language and art to reconstruct a lost world.
Absolutely. And though we may never have a complete picture of Elamite civilization, these fragments are incredibly valuable. They remind us that history is full of interconnected stories, echoes of the past that continue to resonate.
I love that idea, echoes of the past.
Yeah.
And it's a fitting way to think about Elam.
Mm-hmm.
Even as the kingdom was declining, they were influencing the empires that came after them.
Right.
It's a reminder that even in defeat, there can be a kind of victory, a legacy that endures long after the kingdom itself is gone.
Beautifully put.
Yeah.
Elam's story may be one of decline and eventual conquest,
Yeah.
but it's also a story of resilience, adaptation, and lasting cultural influence.
Mm.
And there's still so much we're learning about them today.
That's what makes history so captivating. It's not just about dates and battles,
Right.
but understanding the complex web of interactions that shaped our world, recognizing those echoes of the past in the present.
Absolutely.
Which brings us to another civilization that left its mark on history. From the sun-baked plains of Elam, we're heading north to the rugged terrain of Anatolia, modern-day Turkey. Get ready for chariot battles, iron-wielding warriors, and a civilization that went toe-to-toe with Egypt for regional dominance.
Oh, wow.
We're talking about the Hittites, another fascinating and often overlooked power player in the ancient
A
world.
fascinating civilization for sure.
The Hittites were a force to be reckoned with during the late Bronze Age, controlling a vast empire that stretched from the Aegean coast to the Euphrates River.
That's a huge area.
And they were pioneers in many ways, particularly when it came to military technology.
Absolutely.
Okay, you've got my attention. Military tech, tell
Yeah.
me more.
Well, they were among the first to truly master ironworking for weapons,
Interesting.
at a time when most of their rivals were still using bronze.
Right.
The Hittites were forging iron swords, spearheads, even parts for their chariots.
Oh, wow.
This gave them a significant edge in battle.
It's like they skipped ahead a whole technological era.
Yeah, you could say that.
I imagine facing an army armed with iron when you've only got bronze must have been terrifying.
It must have been a shock to encounter these new weapons and tactics on the battlefield.
Right.
And it wasn't just the material itself.
Okay.
The Hittites developed techniques for producing stronger, more durable iron.
Mm-hmm.
This wasn't just a blacksmith tinkering in his shop.
Right.
They were operating on an industrial scale, producing weapons in large enough quantities to equip a whole army.
That's a game changer.
It really was.
It's like going from dial-up to broadband. But it wasn't just iron, was it?
No, it wasn't.
You mentioned their chariots earlier.
Yes, their chariots were marvels of engineering,
Wow.
designed for speed and maneuverability.
Right.
They played a crucial role in Hittite military victories.
I see.
They were lighter and faster than many of their rivals,
Mm-hmm.
and the use of iron components probably made them even more durable.
Can you picture it? You're an Egyptian soldier facing a wave of these Hittite chariots charging towards you, iron glinting in the sun.
It must have been quite a sight.
It must have been awe-inspiring and utterly terrifying.
I can imagine.
Who are their main rivals, and did they ever clash with these super chariots?
Their most famous rivalry was with Egypt.
Okay.
Both empires were vying for control of what is now Syria,
Right.
a strategically important region with valuable trade routes. And yes, these two titans clashed on more than one occasion, most famously at the Battle of Kadesh, around 1274 BCE.
Oh, wow.
It was one of the largest chariot battles in ancient history, with thousands of chariots clashing on a dusty battlefield. Imagine the chaos, the noise, the sheer scale of it all.
That's a scene straight out of a movie.
It would be.
And who won this epic chariot showdown?
It's actually a matter of debate.
Okay.
Both sides claimed victory at the time, and modern historians still argue about the outcome.
Oh, wow.
It was probably more of a draw.
Right.
But the Battle of Kadesh highlights just how intense the rivalry was between these two empires.
So what happened after this epic clash? Did
Once.
things settle down between the Hittites and the Egyptians?
Surprisingly, yes. In
Really?
a move that was unusual for the time, they eventually negotiated a peace treaty.
A peace treaty.
Yes.
That's almost unheard of in the ancient world, especially between two
I
superpowers.
know, right? It shows you just how powerful and sophisticated both empires were.
Yeah.
They recognized that constant conflict was costly and unsustainable.
Makes sense.
So they agreed to a truce, even sealing it with a royal marriage between the Hittite king and an Egyptian princess.
Diplomacy and a royal wedding. The ancient world is full of surprises.
It is.
But this treaty, this unusual peace between empires, did it last?
It did for a while, which is remarkable in itself.
Yeah.
This treaty ushered in a period of relative peace and stability in the region. It's a fascinating example of ancient diplomacy and shows just how pragmatic these powerful rulers could be when it suited their interests.
So peace in the valley, or at least in Anatolia and Egypt?
Right.
But I'm guessing the Hittite story doesn't end with everyone happily ever after, does it?
You're right, it doesn't.
It's
Despite this period of stability, the Hittite Empire, along with many other Bronze Age civilizations, collapsed around 1200 BCE.
This is the infamous Bronze Age collapse, right? What happened? Do historians have any idea?
It's one of the biggest mysteries of the ancient world. There are many theories, of course, everything from climate change and natural disasters to internal unrest and invasions by those mysterious sea peoples we hear about.
Right.
But the exact cause of the Hittite Empire's downfall and the broader Bronze Age collapse is still being debated.
Another puzzle for historians to piece together.
It is.
So the mighty Hittites, masters of iron and chariots,
Yes.
weren't immune to the forces of history.
No one is.
But I imagine they left behind more than just ruins, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
The Hittites were incredible builders, creating impressive cities with monumental gateways and intricate relief carvings.
Wow.
And they developed their own unique writing system, which has been crucial in helping us understand their history and culture.
And I bet their military innovations, especially the use of iron, continued to influence warfare for centuries to come.
You bet. The adoption of iron weaponry, along with those advanced chariot tactics, had a ripple effect across the ancient world, changing the face of warfare.
It makes you think, doesn't it?
It does.
These civilizations, though long gone, left behind these enduring legacies that continue to shape our world today. We've seen it with the Elamites and their cultural influence on the Persian Empire, and now with the Hittites and their military innovations.
Right.
It's a powerful reminder that history is more than just dates and names. It's a tapestry of interconnected stories, innovations, and ideas that continue to resonate across time.
What struck me most is the resilience we've encountered in both of these civilizations. The Elamites, caught between superpowers, managed to not only survive, but also influence the course of history, even in their twilight years. And the Hittites, facing their own challenges, revolutionized warfare and left behind a legacy of art and architecture that still captivates us today.
It's inspiring, really. Even when faced with seemingly insurmountable obstacles, these civilizations found ways to adapt, innovate, and leave their mark on the world. Their stories are a reminder that even in the face of decline or defeat, there's a potential for lasting impact, for echoes that reverberate far beyond their own time.
It makes you wonder what echoes of our own time might shape future civilizations.
Right.
What seemingly insignificant events today will historians be puzzling over centuries from now?
That's a great question to ponder, and it's a perfect place to wrap up this deep dive. Thank you for joining us as we explored the fascinating stories of the Elamites and the Hittites. We hope you've come away with a deeper appreciation for the enduring legacies of these ancient civilizations. Until next time, keep exploring.